499 BC, Aristogorges of Miletus was about to hit his boiling point. The Ionians and Persians had failed the siege at Naxos. Now he owed the Persians a large debt. Now he was in danger of losing his position. With nothing to lose, he did consider revolting. Histius was quietly spending his exiled days in Susa. He came up with a cunning plan. He sent a slave to Miletus and had him shave his head when he got there, revealing a tattooed scalp with the word revolt. He hoped from here that Aristogorges would start the revolt and King Darius would have to send him back to clean up the mess. And you know what? That's exactly what happened. Now Aristogorges had a revolt to begin, and as you all know, if you want to achieve something amazing in life, you need to create a step-by-step plan on how to complete your goal. How is this going to be achieved and what your completed goal will look like? It's so simple. In this situation, the goal is to achieve complete independence from Persia. This is easier said than done. For this to work, they need to match the Persians' military, and this has never been done at this point in history. Spread the revolt across coastal Anatolia, cause the Persians a horrendous headache. Now, the step-by-step plan on scoring that goal. Step 1, send men to infiltrate Myus in a disguise and capture many Persian fleet commanders. Now in an open rebellion. Step 2, begin abdicating his own position in favour of democratic government in Miletus. He himself was voted in as a leader by the people. He then continued to spread the rebellion to other cities and creating the same democratic-style government, tossing out leaders that opposed him. Step 3, acquire powerful allies. Aristogorges made the journey to Sparta to ask for assistance. He met with the Spartan king Cleomenes. He showed him a map of the world and suggested that the Persians would be easy to defeat and that there were many treasures and riches to plunder. The king demanded 2 more days to make his decision. After this time, he queried how long the journey would take to Asia. 3 months, Aristogorges replied. The king lost interest and declined, for Sparta had their own fears of revolt. Aristogorges went on to Athens. He spoke to an audience of 30,000 and gained their favour, finding it much easier to convince a crowd over an individual. Athens agreed to aid with 20 warships and 5 from the Eretrians. They owed the Ionians a debt from previous war. Step 4, Battle of Sardis. On their arrival in Miletus, they proceeded to attack Sardis. The siege faced no real opposition except for the central stronghold in the town, which was defended by Atrophimes and a strong force. One soldier set a house on fire and quickly turned the whole town ablaze. The locals, obviously alarmed, took shelter in the centre of the town. The Ionians were threatened by the large forces gathering in the centre and withdrew. The retreat continued into the night, tired and worn out from the siege. To their surprise, a large Persian company appeared out of nowhere, ambushed and quickly encircled. The Ionians were easily routed and survivors scattered to nearby cities. But wait a second, how did the Persians know where they were? And even if they knew where they were, how did they catch up to them? Well, you see, the fires alerted the Persian company to Sardis. From there, they tracked the Ionians. Not to mention, this particular Persian company were horseback archers and had no issue catching up with the weary and tired Ionian infantry. It really seems like lighting the town ablaze did zero favours for the Ionians. After this battle, the Athenians wanted nothing to do with the Ionian revolt, in spite of frequent pleads from Aristogorges. When King Darius heard of the Athenians' aid in the revolt, he was angry. No, he wasn't angry, he was furious, exasperated. Livid, he was livid. He was so livid, his face went red, and after Histius then told him to calm down, his face went purple, and he lost the plot. He swore, "I will punish those Athenians." He then turned his attention to Histius and asked him if this was his doing. Histius lied, explaining that Aristogorges has rebelled on his own terms. He convinced Darius to send him back to Ionia to fix this crisis. Before Histius could arrive, the Ionians continued to gain control of northern cities close to the Hellespont, including Byzantium and others in the area, all joining the rebellion. The revolt has spread to Cyprus and the city of Salamis. Onesimus, younger brother to leader of the city, Gorgas, wanted to revolt against the Persians. He encouraged his brother again on hearing of the revolts in Ionia, but Gorgas would not listen. With some help, Onesimus conjured a plan. He waited for Gorgas to leave the city and shut the gates on his own brother. He must really hate his brother. Having lost the city, Gorgas fled to the Persians. Onesimus encouraged revolt amongst all of Cyprus. The city of Amathus refused, so he sieged the city. The Cyprians' sophisticated intelligence discovered that a Persian force was preparing for battle, so they sent messengers to Ionia asking for help. The Ionians saw this as a great opportunity. Step 5. Naval Domination. The Persians promptly landed and marched on to Salamis. The Phoenicians aided the Persians with a navy, sailing around the peninsula, securing what's known as the Keys of Cyprus. Not physical keys, I guess it's an analogy. The city chief of Cyprus met with the Ionians and offered them the option of attacking the Persians on land or the Phoenicians by sea. The Ionians said, "Hey man, we have a step-by-step plan on how to win the revolt, and step 5 is naval dominance, so that's what we're going to do." Onesimus quickly arranged an army within Salamis and Sola to battle the Persians by land. The battle took place, however, a part of the Cyprus army, the Carians, betrayed them, turning the tide of the battle, resulting in the Cyprian army being routed, and many were killed, including Onesimus. Well, that's what you get for betraying your brother. This is so ironic, I love history. Anyway, victory on land for the Persians. However, the naval battle was quite the opposite. The Ionians defeated the Phoenicians comprehensively. All towns in Cyprus were now under siege. The revolt in Cyprus was put out as quickly as it started. The Ionians returned home, winning their part of the battle, but not the decisive one. King Darius set his sights on putting out the revolts in Asia Minor. He started by taking back towns in the north, close to the Hellespont, then marching on to Caria. They promptly prepared an army for battle. Carians let the Persians cross the river. The strategy was to battle the Persians with their backs against the river. This meant they would have a challenging time retreating. However, you need to make them retreat in the first place for that strategy to work. The battle was long and violent. Caria were significantly outnumbered and defeated. The survivors hid away, pondering surrender. The Myosians arrived and prepared to battle again. They lost the following battle and another with similar results. They did regroup and discovered that the Persians were intending to attack their towns. They laid a trap on the Pedasus road. During nightfall, they ambushed the Persians, defeating them and killing a number of Persian commanders. This resulted in a stalemate, and very little campaigning continued for that year. The next year, the Persians, refreshed after a break, continued to take back control of Asia Minor. Aristogorges knew that defeat was inevitable, and his 5-step plan to a successful revolt had failed. I guess he needed more steps. Now he is planning to escape. He left to Myrcanus in Thrace, that Histius, his former leader, had created several years ago. He gained control of the territory he was after, and during a siege of a Thracian town, he was killed and all his men. I don't think that was part of the plan. For someone that seemed to scheme and plan so much, he was not very good at it. Pythagoras was left in charge of Miletus. Histius finally made his way back to Miletus under the cover of darkness. The Milesians were ready to go bananas after everything they'd gone through with Aristogorges. When Histius arrived, he was wounded in his thigh by one of the Milesian people. People of Miletus were pleased to get rid of Aristogorges and not impressed for a leader of the same formation to come back. He returned to Chios, gathered a small number of vessels, and travelled to Byzantium and became a pirate. Meanwhile, the Persians were planning a naval and land attack on Miletus to put an end to the revolt. The Ionians agreed that they did not have enough resources to defend by land and decided to go all in with a naval defense. Still trying to finish step 5, I see. The Persians made an offer to the allied contingents. Lay down your arms and detach from the fight, and your disobedience will be forgiven by the empire. The offer was initially ignored. The Ionian fleet was commanded by Dionysus. He worked them hard for a week, working all day and all night. The second week, the Ionians had had enough of the hard work and camped on the shoreline, refusing to train. The Samian contingent was not impressed with such ill discipline and promptly agreed to the Persians' proposal. On the day of the battle, the Samians abandoned their formation and sailed home, leaving the rest of the allied forces out to dry. A number of contingents saw the Samians leaving and themselves gave up and also abandoned the battle. The contingents that remained were routed. The Battle of Lad was the decisive victory the Persians needed. The revolt continued for another year as Chios and other cities were finally recaptured and the Ionian Revolt was finally put to rest. But what happened to Miletus? And what happened to Histius? Yeah, we're not quite finished yet. Miletus was destroyed. Most men were killed. Women and children were sold as slaves. Histius learnt of the news to Miletus and prepared a contingent to fight in the final days of the revolt. He fought in a handful of battles before finally being captured and sent to Atrophanes. He then sent Histius to Darius in a body bag. Atrophanes had him killed and impaled. King Darius honoured and buried his friend. He then remembered the Athenians and became livid with anger again. War would not reside for long. Next in their sight was Athens. If you have made it this far, thanks for watching.